Your thumb ghosts across the screen at 2 a.m. The glow bathes your face in artificial light as another video loads. A teenager in ripped jeans stares directly into the camera, deadpan expression cutting through the digital noise. Life's a simulation. We're all NPCs. Fuck it. Dance anyway. 10 million likes. Heart emoji reactions cascade like digital rain. Swipe up. Another face appears. Confetti rains down on a breakup rant, filters sparkling against tears. Existence is pointless, but this filter absolutely slaps. The comment section explodes with skull emojis and mood reactions. Your finger hesitates on the screen. Something about this feels familiar. Something about this feels true. Welcome to the scroll of the void. Right now, as you listen to these words, millions of people are consuming nihilistic content on TikTok. The hashtag #nihilism has exploded past 500 million views in 2023 alone. Videos questioning the meaning of existence rack up engagement rates that would make motivational speakers weep into their vision boards. While Dharmish manifestation preaches abundance, nihilism whispers seductively that abundance is an illusion. This is the paradox that should terrify us. Despair has gone viral. Imagine your own feed. One video preaches hustle culture. Wake up at 5 a.m., grind until you drop, manifest your destiny. Swipe. The next whispers softly that why bother trying when heat death will claim the universe anyway. Your heart races because somewhere deep down, the void feels familiar. It feels like coming home. But here's what should keep you awake tonight. This isn't random. This isn't just Generation Z being dramatic on the internet. Something ancient and dangerous has found the perfect breeding ground in our infinite scroll economy. A philosophical virus, centuries in the making, has discovered its ideal host. Why now? Why is this ancient poison bubbling up in bite-sized clips, infecting millions with the sweet relief of meaninglessness? What hidden algorithms are amplifying humanity's darkest truths? And most unsettling of all, why does it feel so good to watch the world burn in 15-second intervals? The answers lurk deeper than any trending hashtag. They stretch back through history's bloodiest rebellions and philosophy's most dangerous ideas. They wind through the twisted corridors of human psychology and emerge, blinking, into the cold light of social media's addiction economy. Something is happening to us. Something we're not supposed to see. But once you do, you'll never scroll the same way again. To understand why nihilism is conquering TikTok, we must first journey to where this darkness was born. Not in some teenager's bedroom with ring lights and anxiety, but in the revolutionary chaos of 19th century Russia, where young radicals first weaponized the idea that nothing, absolutely nothing, has inherent meaning. Picture St. Petersburg, 1862. Smoke from student protests mingles with the winter air. In cramped apartments lit by flickering candles, young intellectuals gather around banned books, their eyes burning with revolutionary fervor. They called themselves nihilists, from the Latin nihil, meaning nothing. These weren't angsty teenagers scrolling through social media. These were dangerous idealists willing to tear down empires. The word itself exploded into public consciousness through Ivan Turgenev's novel Fathers and Sons. His character Bazarov became the archetypal nihilist, coldly explaining their creed. We act by virtue of what we recognize as useful. At present, the most useful thing is denial, so we deny. Deny what? Everything. God, country, family, love, beauty, justice. All of it, they argued, was elaborate fiction designed to keep people docile and obedient. Sound familiar? Scroll through TikTok and you'll find their spiritual descendants, armed not with bombs, but with irony, dismantling every sacred belief with the same surgical precision. But the Russian nihilists were just the opening act. The real prophet of meaninglessness was a German philosopher whose shadow still haunts every existential TikTok, Friedrich Nietzsche. In the 1880s, Nietzsche looked at his rapidly changing world and saw something terrifying approaching. The Industrial Revolution was turning humans into cogs in massive machines. Darwin had shown that humans were just another animal, not God's special creation. Science was systematically dismantling every comforting myth humanity had ever told itself. God is dead, Nietzsche declared, and we have killed him. This wasn't celebration. This was a funeral announcement for meaning itself. With God gone, Nietzsche realized, everything built on divine foundation would crumble. Morality, purpose, hope, all of it would collapse into what he called the uncanniest of all guests: nihilism. Nihilism stands at the door, he wrote in his notebooks. Whence comes this uncanniest of all guests? Nietzsche saw two paths opening before humanity: passive nihilism, the quiet despair of realizing nothing matters, leading to resignation and withdrawal; or active nihilism, the violent destruction of old values to clear space for new ones. He feared passive nihilism most of all, because it would turn humans into what he called the last men, creatures who no longer even wanted to want anything. Look at your TikTok feed with fresh eyes. How many videos celebrate the exhaustion of caring? How many find comfort in the idea that ambition is pointless, that trying is cringe, that the cool thing is to not want anything at all? The last men are living in your phone. But Nietzsche's prophecy found its perfect laboratory in the factories and assembly lines of the Industrial Revolution. For the first time in human history, millions of people spent their days performing meaningless, repetitive tasks. They weren't craftsmen creating something beautiful. They weren't farmers connected to the rhythms of nature. They were human machines, replaceable parts in systems too vast to comprehend. This mechanized alienation planted seeds of meaninglessness that would grow for generations. The same forces that turned workers into cogs are now turning us into content creators, performing our lives for invisible algorithms, optimizing our personalities for engagement metrics we'll never fully understand. The gig economy has merely digitized what the Industrial Revolution began: the transformation of human beings into interchangeable resources, valuable only for what they can produce, discarded the moment they become inconvenient. These weren't just ideas brewing in philosophy books. They were survival screams against a world that had lost its anchor. The old certainties, God, king, tradition, had been revealed as human constructs. But humans had evolved to need certainty, to crave meaning, to find patterns even where none existed. What happens when meaning-seeking creatures discover that meaning might be an illusion? The philosophers had identified the disease. Psychology would later explain why it spread so easily through minds desperate for truth, even when that truth is the absence of truth itself. Deep in your brain, right now, an ancient system is running a program it was never designed to handle. For hundreds of thousands of years, human minds evolved to find meaning in everything. The rustle in the bushes might be wind, or it might be a predator. The patterns in the stars might reveal when to plant crops. The stories elders told around fires might contain survival wisdom passed down through generations. Your brain is a meaning-making machine, constantly scanning for patterns, purposes, connections. It cannot stop. Even when you sleep, it weaves random neural firings into stories you call dreams. But what happens when this meaning-seeking system encounters a world where traditional sources of meaning have collapsed? What happens when the patterns your brain finds lead not to purpose, but to the unsettling conclusion that there might be no purpose at all? Viktor Frankl discovered part of the answer in humanity's darkest hour. As a psychiatrist imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, he observed something that should have been impossible. Some prisoners maintained hope and purpose even in hell, while others, with every reason to live, simply gave up and died. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. But Frankl also identified what he called the existential vacuum, a profound emptiness that occurs when people lose their sense of meaning and purpose. This vacuum, he observed, was becoming epidemic in modern society. People had food, shelter, safety, all the basics of survival, but they felt hollow inside. The existential vacuum creates a psychological hunger that will consume anything to fill itself. Sometimes it devours healthy meaning, relationships, creativity, service to others. But sometimes, when those sources seem unavailable or false, it turns to darker food. Sometimes it feeds on the bitter comfort of meaninglessness itself. This is where nihilism becomes seductive. When overwhelmed by choice, paralyzed by possibility, exhausted by the demand to create your own purpose, the brain finds relief in a simple equation. If nothing matters, then you can't make the wrong choice. Barry Schwartz documented this in The Paradox of Choice. Give people too many options, and they become less satisfied with whatever they choose. The abundance of possibilities in modern life, career paths, relationship styles, identity options, lifestyle choices, creates decision fatigue that can drive people toward nihilism as a psychological escape hatch. If nothing matters, you don't have to choose wisely. If life is meaningless, you can't fail at it. But there's an even deeper psychological mechanism at work. Terror management theory, developed by researchers studying how humans cope with awareness of death, reveals that we build elaborate psychological defenses against existential anxiety. We create cultures, belief systems, and personal identities that make us feel significant and immortal. When these cultural buffers fail, when institutions lose credibility, when traditional beliefs crumble, when the future seems uncertain, terror management systems go into overdrive. Some people double down on ideology. Others retreat into nihilistic detachment. Think about Generation Z's unique experience. They've watched institutions fail in real time, economic promises broken, climate futures stolen, political systems revealed as performative theater. The cultural buffers their parents relied on have been exposed as fragile constructs. Is it any wonder that a generation raised on institutional failure finds comfort in the idea that the game was rigged from the start? But here's where psychology reveals nihilism's cruelest trick. It promises relief from suffering while actually intensifying it. Studies of hedonic adaptation show that humans naturally return to baseline happiness levels even after positive or negative events. Lottery winners are no happier than before winning within months. Trauma survivors often recover their capacity for joy. This means that even genuine happiness feels temporary, reinforcing the nihilistic narrative that pleasure is fleeting and therefore pointless. Your brain's own healing mechanisms become evidence for meaninglessness. The psychological research reveals something chilling. Nihilism isn't just a philosophical position. It's a symptom of psychological systems overwhelmed by modern life's complexity, isolation, and instability. It's a defense mechanism that has become an identity, a coping strategy that has mutated into a worldview. And now this worldview has found the perfect delivery system. An algorithm that rewards emotional intensity, feeds on engagement, and learns to give you exactly what you don't know you're craving. Your phone knows you're hungry for meaning. It just can't tell the difference between meaning and the absence of meaning, between food and poison. So it feeds you both and waits to see which keeps you scrolling longer. The TikTok algorithm doesn't care about your mental health. It cares about your attention. And nothing captures attention like the sweet shock of someone saying the quiet part out loud. That maybe, just maybe, this whole existence thing is an elaborate joke with no punchline. Here's how the machine works. Every microsecond you spend watching, every pause before scrolling, every return to replay a video feeds data into ByteDance's algorithmic beast. The system has learned that content triggering strong emotional responses, surprise, outrage, recognition, even existential dread, creates the neurochemical hits that keep users locked in the scroll. Nihilistic content is algorithmic gold. It combines the shock value of taboo truth-telling with the recognition dopamine of shared experience. When someone on your screen deadpans, "We're all going to die anyway, so I ordered the extra guac," your brain lights up with the pleasure of finding your tribe. But there's something more insidious happening beneath the surface. Internal documents from ByteDance reveal that the For You page algorithm prioritizes content that generates the highest 15-second retention rates. Videos that make people pause, replay, or watch to completion get massive distribution boosts. Nihilistic content excels at this metric. A perfectly timed existential punchline hits different than generic positivity. Everything happens for a reason, gets a polite heart emoji. Nothing happens for any reason, and that's why I'm having cereal for dinner gets saves, shares, and comments. The algorithm has learned to weaponize despair for engagement. Consider the social dynamics at play. Sharing overtly positive content carries social risk. You might seem naive, privileged, or out of touch. But sharing nihilistic content provides social camouflage. It signals intelligence, authenticity, humor. It says, "I see through the bullshit," without having to propose alternatives. This creates what researchers call performative nihilism. People adopting nihilistic poses not because they truly believe nothing matters, but because nihilistic content generates social validation in algorithmic ecosystems designed to reward emotional intensity over emotional health. Generation Z's relationship with nihilism is particularly complex. They came of age during the 2008 financial crisis, lived through school shooting drills, inherited a climate crisis, and then watched the world shut down during a global pandemic during some of their most formative years. The Surgeon General has declared youth loneliness an epidemic. Studies show that 46% of teenagers report feeling worse about themselves after using social media. Student debt has reached $1.7 trillion. Housing prices have made home ownership a fantasy for many young adults. When traditional markers of adulthood and success seem impossible to achieve, nihilism offers an alternative framework. Maybe those markers were always meaningless anyway. This is where TikTok's nihilistic content becomes especially seductive. It does not just acknowledge Gen Z's struggles, it reframes those struggles as evidence of cosmic meaninglessness rather than systemic problems that could be addressed. Can't afford a house? The housing market isn't broken. The concept of ownership is an illusion. Struggling with mental health? Depression isn't a medical condition. It's clarity about reality's nature. Feeling isolated? Connection is impossible because authenticity is impossible because the self is an illusion. Nihilistic TikTok content provides what psychologists call secondary gains, psychological benefits that reinforce problematic behaviors. It transforms personal struggles into philosophical insights, social problems into cosmic truths, treatable conditions into badges of intellectual sophistication. The most successful nihilistic creators understand this psychology intuitively. They don't just share dark thoughts. They make darkness feel enlightened, make despair feel like wisdom, make giving up feel like waking up. Take the viral trend of quiet quitting videos, which have generated over 1 billion views. These videos frame minimal workplace effort not as depression or disengagement, but as philosophical awakening to capitalism's meaninglessness. The algorithm rewards this reframing because it generates strong emotional responses. Recognition from burned-out workers, outrage from productivity evangelists, curiosity from everyone else. But here's the most disturbing part. The algorithm doesn't distinguish between content that helps users process difficult emotions and content that traps them in those emotions. A video helping someone work through existential anxiety and a video reinforcing existential paralysis might receive identical algorithmic treatment if they generate similar engagement metrics. Your next scroll isn't random. It's the result of millions of calculations designed to serve you content that previous users with similar behavioral patterns found irresistible. If people who relate to nihilistic content also engage heavily with videos about anxiety, depression, and social isolation, the algorithm will serve you that entire emotional ecosystem. You're not just watching nihilistic content, you're being fed a curated nihilistic reality, personalized to your psychological vulnerabilities, optimized for your attention, and updated in real time based on your responses. The machine has learned to turn Kierkegaard's dread into a duet you can't unhear. And every time you watch, every pause before scrolling, every slightly too long stare at the screen teaches it to sing that song a little more perfectly for you. From Nietzsche's godless dawn to TikTok's endless night, we've traced nihilism's evolution from philosophical rebellion to viral entertainment. But standing at the end of this digital rabbit hole, what have we actually discovered? Perhaps this: nihilism thrives because it offers something our meaning-saturated world desperately craves: permission to stop pretending. In a reality of scripted social media performances, curated professional identities, and endless optimization culture, admitting that the script might be meaningless feels like the first honest thing anyone has said in years. The teenagers on your phone aren't just being dramatic. They're responding to something real. The suffocating weight of inherited systems that promise meaning but deliver only performance metrics. When life becomes content and content becomes currency, nihilism whispers that the whole economy might be counterfeit. But here's what the algorithm cannot capture: the moment after the video ends. The silence where you sit with the question the nihilistic content raised but couldn't answer. If nothing matters, why does this truth unsettle you so? If existence is truly meaningless, why does meaninglessness require such elaborate explanation and constant reinforcement? Albert Camus, who wrestled with similar questions in post-war France, offered a different possibility. Yes, the universe might be absurd. Yes, our search for meaning might be futile. But one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Not happy in denial of his eternal boulder-pushing punishment, but happy in defiant rebellion against it. Creating meaning not because the universe provides it, but precisely because it doesn't. Finding joy not in cosmic purpose, but in the human capacity to say yes to life, even when life says no to them. This isn't a solution. It's barely even comfort. But it suggests a third option, beyond accepting meaninglessness or desperately manufacturing false meaning. The possibility of creating authentic meaning in full acknowledgement of life is absurdity. What would that look like in practice? Maybe it's having a real conversation instead of performing one for an audience. Maybe it's taking a walk without photographing it. Maybe it's choosing to care about something small and local and imperfect instead of despairing about everything vast and global and broken. Maybe it's recognizing that the question, "What's the point?" contains its own answer. You are the point, for as long as you choose to be. As the screen fades to black and the ambient TikTok audio warps into silence, ask yourself, is the void staring back at you, or is it inviting you to fill it? The next time you open the app, remember, you're not just consuming content. You're engaging with philosophical arguments that have shaped centuries of human thought, delivered through an attention economy that profits from your uncertainty. Your scroll is your vote. Your pause is your participation. Your choice to watch or swipe is your unconscious contribution to what kind of reality gets amplified and what kind gets buried. The algorithm serves you what you feed it. If you're hungry for meaning, it will serve you videos about meaning's absence. If you're craving connection, it will show you content about isolation. If you're searching for truth, it will offer you the seductive lie that truth is impossible. But here's the secret the machine cannot learn. You can feed it something else. You can choose differently. You can scroll with intention instead of compulsion. Engage with curiosity instead of confirmation bias. And remember that the most radical act in a nihilistic culture might be the simple decision to act as if something matters, even if you're not sure what that something is yet. even if you have to discover it one conscious choice at a time. The void is patient. It will wait. But so will meaning if you're brave enough to create it.